An investment bank is a special type of bank involved in a variety of large and complex financial services for major institutions. Major investment banks include Barclays, Merrill Lynch, Goldman Sachs, Deutsche Bank, JP Morgan, Morgan Stanley, UBS, Credit Suisse, and Citibank. Unlike commercial and retail banks, they do not take deposits. From 1933 until 1999, the Glass-Steagall Act kept commercial banks and investment banks separate. The U.S. Congress repealed this act in 1999. In 2010, the Volcker Rule, part of the Dodd-Frank Act, enacted to prevent another Great Recession, reinstituted some separations. The investment banking business is split into two parts, the sell side and the buy side. The sell side refers to the creation, promotion, analysis, and sale of securities to the buy side of the industry. This involves underwriting securities offerings, which means funding and bringing them to market. The buy side involves large-scale buying of securities for mutual funds, pension funds, private equity funds, hedge funds, and insurance firms for money management purposes. One main service of investment banks is helping companies raise capital. They advise companies on issuing new debt and equity, underwrite these offerings, and help sell securities. Investment banks also guide companies involved in mergers, acquisitions, and reorganizations. They act as a broker and/or financial advisor for institutional clients and trade securities in their own accounts.
Rafat Arizvi, former owner of Bank Century, together with Hazam, he is responsible for the storage asset securities collateral Century borrowed. Rafat Arizvi filed to the Indonesian government worth $75 million to the Court of Arbitration for Investment-Related Issues or ICSID on May 12, 2011. Because they felt aggrieved over the business in terms of government policy to disburse the bailout of Bank Century at 6.7 trillion rupiahs. November 20, 2008, Century Bank decided as the bank fails and sent a letter to the minister on the status determination failed bank on Bank Century and expressed the need for further treatment. Sri Mulyani, as chairman of the Financial Sector Stability Committee, immediately held a meeting to discuss the fate of this Century Bank and not the capital adequacy ratio or CAR of Bank Century minus up to 3.52% through the data as of October 31, 2008. It was decided in order to increase capital requirement to raise CAR to 8% is 632 billion rupiahs. The meeting also discussed whether there will be a systemic impact if the Bank Century liquidated. December 31, 2008, Century Bank recorded a loss of 7.8 trillion rupiah in 2008. Its assets ordered into 5.58 trillion rupiahs of 14.26 trillion rupiahs in 2007.
Bank Century case is caused by the decision of Budiono and Sri Mulyani, who was then becoming a Financial Stability Committee or KSSK, decided the bailout of amounted to 6.7 trillion rupiah.
Bank Century case is also not only the line center of attention of the government of Indonesia but also internationally. The Century Bank case was brought to the international court that finally a decision that the government of Indonesia won the lawsuit bailout of Bank Century, now Bank Mutiara. in a trial in international arbitration. That is, with this victory and victory on lawsuit, Rafat Ali Rizvi earlier, the government of Indonesia to avoid a demand for compensation of 100 million US dollar or equivalent to 1.3 trillion rupiah. In the case of banks this century, it is clear that the state harmed by the evidence that the CPC has found violation of law related to the decision-making bailout. The beneficiary is a bank or a corporation century that the law was also mentioned may be the subject of legal corruption. The pro to bailout bank century assess that there is a possibility if the century bank is closed, then there will be the potential systemic impact on other banks that lead to the possibility of re-rush situation or situations such as the economic crisis in 1998. The fact the current economic situation indeed significantly explain if Bank Century was closed regardless of the assessment that the Century Bank is a bank that is small. It will still have a systemic impact on other banks. Foreign investment in the banks in Indonesia, namely the Century Bank, was still not able to save the financial problems in Indonesia. Century Bank failures were a systemic impact on other banks and make possible the lead banks in Indonesia almost lead to the 2008 economic crisis in Indonesia. The Indonesian government immediately took measures to bail out banks make Indonesia suffered losses in large quantities. In our opinion, why this early Century Bank case caused 2008 economic crisis in Indonesia? Because the Bank Century case in impact not only in terms of economic but also politically movement in Indonesia.
So, in the end, the case of a bank failure, this Century Bank is an example of the impact on the economy of Indonesian banking investment, which turned out to be not a good impact on the economy of this country, Indonesia.